Takayuki Kubota, also known as Tak Kubota. And he passed in August of this year. He was born in September 20, 1934. And he was a pioneer, inventor, and a lifelong advocate of self-defense and discipline and karate. He started at the age of 4 under his father, a jiu-jitsu and ju-kendo master. And his early training involved various disciplines like judo, jiu-jitsu. And at the age of 13, he moved to Tokyo. And this decision would change him in so many ways. He found himself assisting in the detention of criminals using his martial arts skills. And this act of bravery, as Black Belt magazine records, brought the attention of a police officer who had become his mentor, guiding him towards a professional martial arts career. And by age 14, he was already making a name for himself. Kubota's philosophy extended beyond the physical aspects of martial arts. During the 1950s and early 60s, while still in Japan, he would be an instructor to U.S. Army. And for the Air Force, this is really important. Military the Air Force under General Curtis LeMay would make judo a required curriculum for many people who were stationed in Japan at the time, especially pilots and navigators. Like Bruce Lee, he was at the first ever Ed Parker's annual International Karate Tournament in Long Beach, California. Like Bruce Lee, it would also help with the trajectory of his life, where it would permanently have him relocated to the United States. And he would also, of course, be involved in movies, and he would be involved in training actors and other Hollywood personnel, as well as, he never left it, the regular person. As you'll see in some of these clips here, his most famous student is probably James Caan, who himself is or was a legitimate black belt karateka under Tak. Soke Tak Kubota is the founder of Gosoku Ry Karate. And this is something from one of the websites, and I just thought it was probably something that was interesting to say, is that someone said once that if you threw all the top masters in the world into one room and had them fight, Kubota would be the one who walked out. And here's Tak with his student James Caan, having a little fun while putting this into one of Caan's movies. Just you see Tak there in his whitey-tighties and filming it for a movie and just having a little bit of fun with it. When I was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base, I was very fortunate because of Hanshi Dan Heck to have met other people, and I would travel and go to tournaments and meet people in the know. I never got to meet Tak, but I was able to encounter some people who knew him and did know him, and they tell some really great stories about how generous he was, how his system of karate was very aggressive and also, though, very smooth. His people were great tacticians, and he used to do things to make them that way. So one thing he was known for doing was taking them out into tournaments where they would compete against other martial artists. These could be more the traditionally AAU type tournaments, or they could be more the open karate tournaments. But he thought it was important that they get out there and get pressure tested in the game to find out what they're good at and what they're weak at, and where they make their mistakes, and so they could come back to the dojo and work on them. And if you just were in the dojo the entire time, you're only fighting people of similar styles and similar patterns. And that's important. I grew up in that type of a system where people did that, but not all karate schools did that then, and not all of them do that to this day. And while I'm not a big fan necessarily of the American sport karate point tournament, I preferred full contact and kickboxing. But I also thought it had its place. And it had its place of camaraderie and encountering many students who do different things, and you pick up and you learn. And so for that, when I participated in those tournaments, of course I would try to win, but I was interested to see other things and pick up other things and see if that can work for me. And so that was I thought the most important thing about that scene. And I like that about Tak, is that he was known, if you get a trophy, great, but we're going there to find out what you're really good at and what you need to improve upon and how we can build up your skills. At least that's what's been related to me. And I think that's really important, and that's what those point tournaments are best at. The kind of pressure test you in front of a crowd and other people and other stimuli, and then get back in that dojo and find out what really works. And so I think that's appreciative because you can borrow so much from other styles. What I also liked about him is that his system and his beliefs and the way he held himself is conservative in far it holds to the traditions of karate. But he's progressive enough to go ahead and get out there and borrow from these other systems. His system of karate is known for having Goju in it and Shotokan in it and Shitsuru in it. So he is not beholden to tradition for tradition's sake. But I think that's the best of a traditionist, or what I would prefer to call a conservative. You're conserving those things you know what works. You're willing to change your mind, but you need evidence for it first. Now, I know I've said this probably some other video somewhere, but what makes talk so interesting to me is probably a little bit of reminiscing. But the 70s, of course, is integral to me. That's when I was a child, and I will start taking the martial arts in 1977. Is that there's very few, a lot of the people today, the younger generation, just doesn't understand it, because they have movies that stream, released, and there's martial arts throughout all types of movies now and all types of genre. There isn't really just a martial arts movie anymore. Take The Matrix. It's science fiction. It's also martial arts. It's action. It's also got a lot of philosophy and religious theology going on there. It embodies all of it. And that wasn't always the case in the 70s. You thought in terms of, I'm going to see a martial arts movie, even if the movie had other plot sophistications going on. And what was neat about Talk is that he was usually a minor character in these other movies in the 70s, where the movie is not central to martial arts. However, martial arts are involved. So take The Mechanic. So I was a fan of Bruce Lee first and foremost, and my second favorite movie star of the mid-70s was Charles Bronson. I was a big Bronson fan. And I was able to go to the theater sometimes and see his movies. So I got to see like Hard Times and Breakout. And I was a big fan of Charles Bronson. But one movie I had to wait to come on TV was The Mechanic. And I couldn't wait to see it, because even though when I finally saw it on TV, I was just beginning martial arts. And we had just got cable by like a month or two prior to that. And The Mechanic was on TV. And I knew from reading Fighting Stars magazine and my martial arts catalog book that I had purchased already, that Talk was going to be on, or Talk was going to be in that film. And I couldn't wait to see it. I didn't know how big of a part, if it was a bit part of what was going to happen. So the movie came out, I think, in 1972. I will see it like in 1977, 78. And so it's a good 5 or 6 years. And by this time, I've seen every Bruce Lee movie besides Game of Death had not been released yet. And it's hard to call that one a Bruce Lee movie. I mean, he's in it, but 12, 15 minutes out of 2 hours. And it had nothing to do with the movie he was directing. But I saw the Bruce Lee movies. I'd seen a couple Chuck Norris movies by this time. Good Guys Were Black, Breaker at the drive-in. And I had saw Black Belt Jones with Jim Kelly. And I think that was probably about it, besides some martial art movies that were of the, what we would term at that time, Chopsaki, or the Kung Fu Theater. So I can't wait. Charles Bronson and Talk are going to be on. So The Mechanic, I'm not going to go through the whole plot, but it has Charles Bronson as an assassin. That's the nickname for a mechanic. And he is training an understudy played by Jan Michael Vincent, who was an up-and-coming star at the time. And Bronson's character takes Jan Michael Vincent's character to the dojo, where they're going to see this competition between this American and Tak, who represents the old ways. Now they get into a fight, and the challenge is that the new ways are better than the old ways. It's really kind of a silly setup, and that it's new ways against old ways, when really it isn't. It's a man who cheats, and then the man who is holding to the more conservative old ways beats the heck out of him for it. But I still got to see some martial arts, and while the fight wasn't as sophisticated as, say, as a Bruce Lee movie or the Chuck Norris movies I'd seen, it was great to watch it, and The Mechanic was better than Breaker. So I got what I could consider to be a decent movie and a martial arts scene. And then the next time I would see The Killer Elite had finally made it to television, and I was able to see The Killer Elite, and Talk was in that movie. Now, the choreography in The Killer Elite is not quite as well. It's a lot of slow motion. Sam Peckinpah, who directed it, was for that. I've came to appreciate that movie more as the older I get. When I was Younger at the time, I kind of booed and hissed because there wasn't enough martial arts in it. And I had all these years of buildup of martial art magazines talking about the killer elite. But you do get to see James Caan, and that's why I really appreciate training throughout that movie. And Tak appears in that movie as well as Danny Inosanto and some other well-known martial arts for the time. So it was neat to see these characters develop and to see Tak in representing the martial arts and specifically representing karate since he was a karate Soke. These pioneers like Tak, what they've done for us in the martial arts today is phenomenal. And I so appreciate it, and I hope the younger generation appreciates it too.